Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Wilkes-Barre area, I'd like to thank all of you for coming today and attending our legislative breakfast. Each year I look forward to this event. It's probably my favorite event of the League, although it's hard to choose. I always come away from here feeling more informed, closer to my legislators, understanding a little bit more my role in civic participation and life. So I'd like to thank you for your continued support. Before we begin, I just wanted to thank King's. I think we've had this event here for at least 8 or more years consecutively. They always do a great job. They're very attentive. This year I even got a stool to sit on, so I earned a chair. I'd also like to thank my student Kristen Kalish. I teach at Lake Lehman, and she devoted her community service hours for her senior project with the League this year, and she's helped out with all our events, and it has been a tremendous help. So I wanted to acknowledge Kristen and some of my other students. Obviously, this event wouldn't be a success without the participation of our legislators. And they always do such a great job with getting back to me, and they're enthusiastic about attending. I never have to worry about that. So I really appreciate their coming here and participating. Representative Boback, Representative Kavulik, and Senator Baker could not be here today. I spoke with them individually, and I know that they really wanted to be here, but they had other commitments that conflicted with this morning's event. So I will, before I introduce the legislators, I just want to tell you a little bit about the format. We're a little more open this year, unfortunately, because of the budget impasse. We do want to we realize there's going to be some conversation and talk about that. So we will begin with a question about that, and I will provide some suggestions about what our audience members in the League would like to hear. And then we'll take questions from the audience, and I'm going to provide several options for the legislators to address what issues they think they can best answer. So we have more time and we cover more topics. The answers will be limited to, for the budget question, 3 minutes per response, and after that I will kindly interrupt you and try to get you to wrap up. The other questions will be 2 minutes. There are index cards and pencils on the tables if you'd like to submit a question, and League representatives will be around to bring those up to me. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our legislators. First, here we have Representative Jerry Mullery from the 119th District, Representative Aaron Coffer from the 120th District, Senator John Blake from the 22nd District, Representative Mike Carroll from the 118th District, Representative Eddie Day-Paszynski from the 121st District, Representative Tara Toohill from the 116th District, and Senator John Udicek from the 14th District. Thanks again for being here today. The first question we prepared was, please give us your thoughts on the budget impasse. I think we're all frustrated, but I think the legislators can give us more insight into what they believe can be improved to get our government working again. And instead of making this a finger pointing or a blame kind of game, I would like them to individually address how this impasse has affected their constituents and their legislative agendas, what they've done to try to remedy it, work with the leadership, and any suggestions for the future. I have a few comments from the audience saying what is going to prevent this from happening again, and another specific question in regards to the emergency funds. What was that money used for? So we'll start with Representative Mullery.
Okay. Did everybody hear me?
You have 3 minutes.
There was a lot of questions intertwined in what was just said there, so I'll try to address as many of them as I can. How do we feel about what's happening in Harrisburg right now? The word frustration, I think, is something that is being shared by all 203 members of the House and 50 members of the Senate. I go a step further, and I know a lot of my colleagues here at the table feel embarrassed that we have been unable to reach an amicable compromise on the direction and future for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I've said right from the start that when you have 4 months from the governor's budget speech to negotiate a compromise and can't get that done, and then now approaching 8 months post-deadline where we've been unable to get it done, it's a reflection in the public's eye and in mine on our ability to do our job effectively. And that's why it's an embarrassment. And unfortunately, what has caused a lot of these similar problems in Washington, D.C. have begun to rear their ugly head in Harrisburg. We have small groups of ideologues in both parties who seem more set on not governing than governing, who have come out either at events in their district or on social media and have taken a hard line on positions that then prevent them from being able to compromise. And if you are not able to compromise in your local township government, on your school board, or in Harrisburg or Washington, D.C., you're not going to get anything done. And a lot of the items that we are going to address today, we were asked about to prepare statements about redistricting and campaign finance reform. All of those have led us to where we are today, where you have folks being elected in primary-only elections because of the way the districts have been redrawn, that we've been able to put people in office who have gotten there because they represent a small group of either the extreme conservative or extreme liberal wing of their parties. Now, fortunately for us in northeastern Pennsylvania, as you look across the people sitting at this table, we're loaded with moderates. But we are the minority in Harrisburg. Everybody at this table is willing to compromise in Harrisburg to reach a budget deal. Unfortunately, that message is not being received by our leaders, and our leaders are unable to convey that message and convey an air of compromise with those who are at the far wings of each party. And I believe that's what's caused us to have this impasse, and until we're able to break through that, I don't know how much progress we're going to make in the immediate future.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Aaron Coffer.
Thank you. And I think Jerry touched on several key points of what he just mentioned. And it's extremism on both sides. I think very often it's painted as, Republican extremism or what. That's typically what I see more often. But it's both sides. And moderates' voices have been drowned out in our current system. And I truly don't believe we're going to change the results we're getting out of government until we change the system itself. I mean, yesterday, a few of us were at a similar panel up in Scranton talking about, we talked about campaign finance reform again. We talked about creating a bipartisan caucus instead of just a Republican and Democratic caucus, actually having an independent caucus where people can come together to actually talk about ideas openly that can actually get this process moving along. I think we're at such an unhealthy part of government right now. I think people are fed up all the way from Washington, D.C. to Harrisburg to every level. People are fed up. And we're right now, I believe, at one of the most unhealthy points of democratic debate that we've ever had. And if we're actually going to talk about how we are going to move our system forward, we actually have to have the conversation about how we're going to change the system itself. And I think that's where we've been lacking in the conversation. We're so quick to jump on one issue or another, but the system right now is created so that it isn't going to create compromise. You mentioned gerrymandering. And I've seen letters to the editor from Jerry before talking about the redistricting process. When we have party leaders controlling the way that we draw our districts, Pennsylvania, they did a study of all the districts for U.S. Congress across the United States. And actually, I'm pretty sure Pennsylvania had 4 of the top 10 most corrupt congressional districts. The number one I got a kick out of, because it was actually in Chicago. What they did was they took both sides of the city and they connected the district by a highway. Now, I know we have an issue with homeless people, but I mean, I don't think there's many people living along the highway to connect that district together. It's all done by party ideologues trying to buffer in districts, and you look at the money influence that's going on both sides of the aisle. Democratic special interests, Republican special interests, you have people threatening money. That to the point now on the presidential level, you need billionaires running for office in order to get traction going. We have to change the system. Now, I'm part of our government reform caucus. I'm very vocal in there. I truly don't believe until we get serious about changing the system. Now, Mike just found this out yesterday, but I wear an orange tie every day, except for July 4th. I do wear a red, white, and blue one. But every day I wear an orange tie as a sign of government reform. Because I truly believe until we change the system, and that's the two-party system. George Washington, when he left office, forewarned us that when he gave it in 1796, leaving the presidency, I have no political ambition, I'm leaving the presidency, beware political factions. We didn't listen, we're at an unhealthy level of debate, and I hope we have a serious conversation about changing the system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we continue, I just want to remind the legislators that I have a question here saying, what is the difference between today and 20 years ago? And also, more specifically, I did have a question, if you care to address it, about where the emergency funds were spent. So,
Can I follow up on that?
no, we're going to move on.
Sorry. I thought there was a follow-up.
That's all right.
I apologize.
That's all right. Senator Blake.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks to the League for hosting us. I appreciate this opportunity. So I'll echo the sentiments of my House colleagues about the level of frustration. I would tell you, we have divided government. We have divided government insofar as we have a governor in the Democratic Party who is elected on a statewide ballot, not subject to the individual districts of our members of the General Assembly. And then you have entrenched Republican majorities in both houses. And within those entrenched Republican majorities are very hardline conservatives. And the representative's right. We've got them on our side too, that hold to the ideology of the left. But listen, we have to, even if we wanted to change the redistricting process, even if tomorrow there was a complete consensus will to change the redistricting process, you know how long it would take? Anybody in this room? 5 years. It would take 5 if tomorrow we had consensus to get it done. And we don't. And we don't. Which means we have to do our job. And you have to hold us accountable, and we have to go back to Harrisburg and figure out how to thread the needle on a deal that can get 102 votes in the House, 26 votes in the Senate, and 1 signature by the governor. I want to answer specifically the questions on the emergency funding. It's really not emergency funding, notwithstanding the reporting that you're hearing. Turns out that in December, the governor got a bill to his desk that passed the House, that passed the Senate, and that he signed. So we, for all intents and purposes, have a state budget. But in signing that budget, he blue-lined about $6.5 billion worth of spending. So the budget that we have is not so much emergency funding as much as it's general fund authorization and appropriation, and those dollars are going out to our schools, they're going out to our counties, they're going out to our nonprofits, they're going out to any state-funded entity across the Commonwealth, but they are not fully funded. They are not fully funded because of the blue lines. And we will face another crisis if we don't address that problem. That's one thing. The other thing is, how did it affect my constituency and what was going on? I met with my superintendents almost on a biweekly basis throughout the impasse. And never did I meet a more beleaguered set of people. Never. They were between a rock and a hard place. I had literally phone calls with the business administrator at the Scranton School District before going to the floor anticipating a vote on a stopgap budget, and wondering whether or not they can close a deal with PNC Bank to borrow $40 million to keep their doors open. And it's cost our schools tons of money to borrow to stay open. That's a problem. The nonprofits, I have to commend Lackawanna County. Lackawanna County commissioners back home, they literally lent money to make sure that the domestic violence services in my county were not interrupted. They actually helped some of the nonprofits to make sure that those services can continue to be provided. And they were backfilled when we did the partial budget. So, I'm done.
Thank you.
I just got the
Senator
stop sign.
I wanted to remind the audience that we're happy to have your questions, but we'd ask that they be addressed to all the legislators. Okay, Representative Mike Carroll?
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. It really is a great pleasure to be here today and to talk about these sorts of issues. As I said to some folks earlier, these forums are my favorite type of events because of the give and take and the dialogue. You know, my perspective on what's happening in Harrisburg, generally speaking, is the beginning of the conversation for me is identical to what Senator Blake said, and that is we do have divided government. I mean, the people of this Commonwealth elected Tom Wolf governor. And from what I see, from my perspective in the General Assembly and the House in particular, is a denial in a lot of ways of the reality that Tom Wolf is governor, and that there will be no final agreement with respect to a budget until both parties, the majority party in the House and in the Senate, working hopefully with the minority party, but also working and getting an agreement with the governor. It's not enough just to pass a budget in the House and the Senate with simply Republican votes and ignore the reality of Tom Wolf's governorship. So, you know, having said that, we've, you know, struggled through an 8-month cycle without an agreement, with the exception I would highlight of end of December, where there was an agreement that was reached in the House and a recorded vote on second consideration for a budget agreement. And a recorded vote that garnered more than 102 votes, Democrats and Republicans, in an effort to try and reach a final agreement that the governor would support. Sadly, the final consideration vote for the next day did not occur. The House Republican leadership, there's no other way to say it, decided not to have that vote, and instead went in a different direction and passed a budget that the governor had declared all along that he was not going to support. And so here we are. We need to have governing in this state. There is, as I mentioned it to Tom when I got here this morning, when I first started in the world of campaigning and government many, many years ago, I often heard somebody say something like this: I hate everything that goes along with the campaign, I just like to govern. I don't like to knock doors, I don't like to fundraise, I don't like all that goes along with the campaign, I just want to go and govern and make a difference. What I see now in 2016 and 2015 is people who want to be engaged in perpetual campaigns. And campaigning has assumed a superior position to governing, where we can campaign people who want to serve as a senator or a state representative or a governor and tell everybody that we're going to talk to all the wonderful things we're going to do. But we never have to declare the compromises that we made and the disappointments, the small disappointments that we might have to provide to constituents, but instead hold out for purity in the world of campaigning, where we just talk about all of the things we're going to do for you and never talk about a compromise. We have to get back to governing. Governing requires compromise. We're not there. I hope we get there.
Thank you, Representative Carroll. Representative Paszynski.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for having us. This is a great example of democracy, and that's exactly, and we all know that that's a tough form of government, but as they say, it's the best form. I'm going to lead off with a statement by Thomas Jefferson, who once said, "The people deserve the government they elect." Somebody elected these fools. Oh, that's us. And fools we might be, but I can tell you that all of us here at the table and so many of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle really go there to try to fix things and try to improve things and try to do their job to make life better for the people they represent. The key points here that I'd like to emphasize is what has already been said. Gerrymandering is a problem. There's way too much money in politics now. Regular folks that would be great legislators, folks like you in this room, would be forced to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, and now for the presidency, billion? Please, $1 billion, is that what it's going to take? No, it's going to be billions. So what's happened is you've lost your government. You've lost your democracy. There's only 30% of the people vote. 40% of the people vote. Who voted in the last election here just in Luzerne County? Was it 20-some%? So there's a disconnect. You are the government, but you must be informed. But you can't be informed because you listen to one television station and they say, this is a cup, and you listen to the other television station, they say, no, it's not a cup. This is a glass. You don't know who to believe. That's why it's going to take work on your part as well to find the truth. And there's truth. Because as you go and you actually begin to peel the lemon back or peel the onion back, you're going to be able to see who's telling the truth and who's misleading you. I'm not going to tell you who that is, because we said we were going to play nice. But you know what? We do play nice. We don't do the negotiating because we're not the leaders. But we try through our channels to get our message to our leaders to say how we feel about different subjects. And we stand in our caucuses and voice those opinions very loudly, whether we support something or not. That then determines what course of action they take. All my colleagues before me said all valuable things, but it still comes back to the fact, the idea to compromise. Right now you have a group that's in power. It's their way or no way. That's the problem.
Thank you, Representative Paszynski. Well done. That was succinct. Representative Tara Toohill.
That's very rare.
Good morning, everyone.
We know, Eddie.
Good morning. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, of course, for hosting this once again. I'm very glad to be here with all of you this morning. On the issue of the budget has been extremely frustrating. It has been the most frustrating budget that I've ever been through. We've had 5 years of on-time, no-tax budgets, and that's a very important part. We have increased education money every year. Education's a big component, and when every year we've done that, and we've had on-time budgets, and now this budget, we did have a June 30th on-time budget that went through, and it's important to understand in other budgets, in 50 years, we haven't had a governor who has vetoed the entire budget. So unfortunately, the entire budget was thrown in the garbage can, and that caused us to have hostages, that caused us to have school districts that don't have their money, human services, victims resources, blind association, all those people not getting their money. And Governor Rendell, to his credit, he never vetoed an entire budget and put us in this sort of a situation. And I think that Governor Wolf is a really nice guy, and I think that he didn't realize the impact of what throwing the entire budget in the garbage was going to have. And so that put us in this situation where you have this whole system where you say, well, you have the Republican House and it's a Republican majority Senate as well, and a Democratic governor. So you have a divided government, and you're trying to get people to work together. And I think Governor Wolf, he's looking at what a lot of us at this table, especially in the Northeast, constantly would talk about property tax relief and trying to reach property tax relief. So if you're going to raise taxes on the people, personal income tax and sales tax, then they better be getting something in exchange for that. And I think many people agree, okay, raise my personal income tax, raise my sales tax, but please let me keep my home. Please help my family preserve our house. And I think that that's an area where there's a lot of ability to have a compromise. But I think our whole budget system, the whole culture of the budget in Harrisburg, it's not like other states. Other states have biannual budgets. I think they have a lot more functional budgets. And instead, we have this culture where it's like, well, we're going to throw in we're going to squeeze in massive pension reform, and we're going to squeeze in liquor privatization, property tax reform. We're going to try to do all these huge heavy lifts and get that all in there, and it's kind of like an eye for an eye, like this for that. The Senate's not doing this unless the House does that, and it creates this whole culture of dysfunction when you're tying in all these other votes, when really it's like, the schools deserve their money. They shouldn't be put in this position year after year to say, are we getting what we're supposed to have? What's going to let us operate? So we need changes on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Toohill. Senator Yudichak.
There is hope. There is hope in this great world. I've been here, I think, 20 times now, and that is the shortest homily by Reverend Pershinsky that I've seen in all these many years. So there is hope. Also, I'm sure that everyone came here today, as I did, with the burning question that was on everyone's mind. Why does Representative Coffer wear an orange tie every day? It was also the #1 question on Teen Beat magazine. We have that answer today. One of the things that I think Representative Carroll made an important phrase that needs to be underlined, the perpetual campaign nature of Harrisburg, of Washington. That's a big difference of where we are today in terms of our budget, in terms of politics in general. It's probably for our political scientists like Dr. Baldino, I think you could probably do a graph and show the 24-hour news cycle has led to a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week campaign cycle. And that hurts governing. Governor Wolf, as Representative Toohill mentioned, is a tremendous guy, and he has wonderful ideas and good intentions. But he did something unprecedented. He initiated television commercials and mail pieces during the budget cycle. That's never been done in the history of Pennsylvania. I told the governor and his staff I thought that was a bad idea. You created a campaign cycle within the budget cycle, and that's made it very difficult to get things done. But one of the things that's really been missed by the 24-hour news cycle is that we did pass a consensus budget, a $30.8 billion budget in the Senate that included pension reform and liquor reform that was sent over the House and unfortunately didn't get its day on the board for an up and down vote. But, you know, Senator Blake and I are both in Senate Democratic leadership. He's done a yeoman's job on the pension issue. I've been on the issue of the severance tax and been in those negotiating rooms. And it is frustrating when you see whether it is the governor on the left or the Republican legislative leaders on the right dig into their ideology and into this mindset of saints versus sinners. We are saints, the other side is sinners. We are all imperfect souls. And sooner that we realize that in politics and recognize that the public, the general public, really, Republican and Democrat in these partisan ideological battles, really are just for the folks that are in that perpetual campaign mode. Mr. and Mrs. Jones on Franklin Street in Wilkes-Barre want to make sure that the trains run on time, the roads are plowed and paved, the potholes fixed, their kids get a shot at a good education, they get a shot at a good job, and that everybody's got decent, quality, affordable health care. They're the issues that they want to focus on. Unfortunately, that partisanship gets away from the real tough decision. That's one thing that I also want to underscore. We have a budget deficit that is going to continue to balloon. And by 2020, it will be over $2 billion. We have $1.9 billion that are in fixed growth rate. So it's not about, oh, folks want to spend more than they have. You have Medicaid and long-term care. Two issues are very difficult to deal with. We're not talking about those difficult issues because we're talking about the partisan stuff that unfortunately gets us away from the important debate and the important decisions that we have to make for Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Senator Utichek. Thank you, all of you. I know it was a difficult question. And I realize redistricting, polarization within the parties, campaigning are problems that you individually can't conquer, but we appreciate your insight. I would like to, we're going to start with Representative Coffer. And Representative Toohill talked about property tax reform as discussed as a potential solution to funding and bringing compromise. So if you wish, I have a question from the audience that's more specific, but you may speak to property tax reform, and these responses will be limited to approximately 2 minutes. However, from the audience, if ever property tax reform, which protects and ensures the current level of funding for over 500 school districts, you know, how would that continue to protect them, but also other views on how you think that reform should go about? Representative Coffer.
There's been several proposals out there. The most popular one that we hear is House Bill, Senate Bill 76, which is property tax elimination. Actually, we have several people up here that are prime sponsors of it. I know Representative Mullery is in the House. Senator Udicek is in the Senate. And what it would do is shift the way that we collect it off the property tax formula to an increase in the sales tax and an income tax level to equitably fund our schools, drive the money back, and make sure they're well funded. I want to double back on something, then I'll talk a little bit more about it, because there was something tied into there of what Representative Toohill said before, of what are the points of compromise in this budget. And I think if you ask everybody, they might have a similar answer, but if you go around and say, what are the things we can actually compromise on? Property tax reform, I bet you, would be at the high point of a lot of the people at this table and a lot of the legislators all around Pennsylvania. Property tax reform, a severance tax, I think would have bipartisan, large majority to support. So where are the points that we can actually get real compromise done on? And at one point, these are both part of a conversation of what the compromise budget was going to look like. They were both taken from the table, which for me was disappointing. Now, I know Representative Bashinsky mentioned this before. You know, we're not at the negotiating table. They come back and they say, here's what we've negotiated. Do you like it? Don't you? And for me, as being somebody, I'm willing to make a deal. What is going to be that point of compromise? Those are, I think, are two that I think people in this area especially want to see. And they're fed up with it. They're fed up with the perpetual cycle. But I think property tax reform right now is the #1 issue of northeastern Pennsylvania. I think it's all across the Commonwealth, but it's a regional issue. And because of our lower wages in Luzerne County, Lackawanna County, that the percentage of what goes to property tax is a much higher percentage than it is in other places. Other places have a much higher property tax, whether it's $12,000 or $14,000 a home in Monroe County. Ours are very high relative to what our actual wages are in this area. So taking that into consideration, your percentage of your wage to what actually goes to property taxes, we're getting hammered in here. And just drive around, you can see the homes for sale. Seniors can't stay in their homes. Younger people can't afford the down payment, plus the mortgage, plus the property taxes on top of it. So I really believe that's the #1 issue that we're facing in our region right now.
Thank you. Senator Blake.
So I think that it would be important for me to draw some connection between what Senator Udicek and others at this panel have said regarding our political culture and this issue, property tax relief. So if property tax relief were to be signed into law by Governor Wolf, does anybody think that that might be a popular thing for this governor?
Yes.
It would be. But do you think that the Republican majorities in the houses of the General Assembly would like to give him that benefit?
Yes, I would.
I do.
Well, in any case, I'm just saying that's part of what goes on in the calculus. It is a problem. Our property tax system has been flawed. It is punitive to our seniors. It is difficult for young families starting out. The Senate Bill 76 debate has raged in Harrisburg for the 5 years I've been down there. I actually voted for Senate Bill 76 out of the Finance Committee because I felt like, even though I thought it might be flawed legislation, and I do believe that in its current form it's flawed legislation. However, there is a way to provide property tax relief, and there is a way to find bipartisan support for property tax relief. We should be working on that. We should be trying to deliver that to the governor's desk. The Senate Democratic Caucus put up a plan of our own that would have provided up to $1,950. It would have eliminated property taxes for about 2 million Pennsylvanians, and it would have provided a rebate for renters. So there's been a lot of proposals back and forth, but they've never been reconciled to the point where we can get those votes in both chambers and that signature by the governor. So I agree, it's a primary issue. Severance tax issue, if the Republican majorities in either house of the General Assembly brought a 5% reasonable severance tax and kept the impact fee in place, I would tell you that it would vote with the majority votes on the floor of both houses. Right now, if it were brought to a vote. But it's not being brought to a vote because it's a contentious issue and leadership is holding on to that. I think it'll happen this year. I think Senator Scarnati has indicated it's probably going to be part of the solution set. So we'll get there.
Thank you, Senator Blake. Representative Carroll.
Thank you very much. The whole property tax relief and elimination discussion has been going on for many, many years, more than I can remember, measured in numbers greater than 10 for sure. What my observation is with respect to property tax elimination or relief is that we need to focus our efforts on homesteads primarily. For me, The whole House Bill, Senate Bill 76 discussion has been helpful from the perspective of having a discussion relative to how we fund our public schools and providing some relief to homeowners, especially senior citizens on fixed incomes. But it is a very tough nut for me to consider an income tax increase on somebody who's changing tires at a tire shop in Pittston while we wipe out property taxes on commercial properties and vacation homes at Lake Wallenpaupack owned by people from New Jersey. You know, asking that person who's changing tires and making a modest living to pay more in an income tax so that we can wipe out property taxes for every single commercial property. Take, for example, the casino. They will probably send us a thank you note if they don't have to pay a property tax anymore. But we will have people who are earning $20,000 and $30,000 paying more in an income tax. I'd far prefer to have a conversation relative to modest property tax relief for all and targeted property tax relief for senior citizens who have a fixed income with modest means. We really, when we have these conversations of we're going to provide perfection, and it's just going to be a simplistic wipe out property taxes, game over. How's that working out? I mean, it hasn't happened for at least 20 years. Maybe it's time to recalibrate and say, let's have modest increases in income tax and sales tax, provide the relief that we can to homeowners that really need it, and move on from there.
Thank you. Representative Paszynski.
Thank you very much. We'll stay a little bit focused very briefly on the severance tax. I think that's a pretty easy one. We're the only state that doesn't have it. We should have had it well back into 2008, 2009, something that's fair and appropriate, and I'll let the experts decide what's fair and appropriate. But right now, Pennsylvania, we have lost $1 billion at least because we didn't have the right kind of tax on that industry. Now, to put the tax on it now, you're not going to get those dollars. But the tax needs to be put on that's fair, and Democrats have been floating a type of a formula that allows for a lower percentage when they're not making money and a higher percentage when they are. But it's coming. They're going to have to pay their due. When it comes to property tax, who would not want to have their property taxes eliminated? Everyone wants to have their property taxes eliminated. Now, where do you come up with $12 to $14 billion? Where do you come up with $12 to $14 billion? That's what the property taxes generate. So there has to be either a new source of money, whether it comes from gambling, sports betting, gas. All of a sudden, we tax marijuana. The bottom line is we don't have a $14 billion source, so the only way we can do it is we have to raise the personal income tax and expand and raise your sales tax. That's the only way you're going to be able to eliminate the $14 billion. And I venture to say, all of you out here have every opportunity to fix it. Tell me how you're going to raise that property, or how you're going to eliminate the property tax by raising your sales and expanding the sales and raising your PIT. Someone in here will say, well, I'd rather the PIT. That would be the easiest thing, which I personally believe it is, because we generate $4 billion with 1% increase. And we are the second lowest in PIT. Someone will say, wait a minute, I want more people to pay because they should increase the sales tax. That way everybody has to buy something, they have to pay for it. Well, that's okay until you begin to expand it and realize that you either have to raise it to 8%, which means Philly would be 10%, which means their economy would collapse. The point is, it's not as easy as it appears. What you, the public, sees is the tip of the iceberg. What we see is the whole iceberg. And that's the problem, trying to maneuver through that system.
Thank you. Representative Toohill.
Thank you. With regard to property tax relief, I think that we are getting very close because we do have a House and a Senate that knows how important it is, and it is on the top item list for the governor. So I do think it's a good thing. I know that once the governor took office, I know that he started to hear from all of the legislators, and many of us in many places, especially in the Northeast, when we talk to him, we say, listen, people are losing their homes where we're from. And I, in particular, I grew up in a home that was constantly up on the foreclosure list. And when you're growing up in a home where there's instability and you look at losing your family home year after year, it's obviously a very stressful environment in the home. It's a stressful environment for the children. It's hard on your parents. And really, we dealt with that, and it was a constant factor, and it's still something that affects my family personally. So it's something that I concentrate a lot on. And unfortunately, I mean, the Senate did make a lot of headway recently, and it even came so close. I mean, you can Google it and look it up again, but it came so close that the lieutenant governor came in and there was a tie-breaking vote. So now we have to rehash that in the House, and I think property tax relief has been argued for since the 1960s. It's something that is something we definitely need to work on. And if you look at, like Representative Carroll was saying with the homesteading, it should be a real family home. It should be a real family home. There's 65-year-olds that are having this problem, 70-year-olds that are having this problem, in particular our seniors on fixed incomes, but our middle class as well, younger people are having a very hard time with property taxes. But I think that obviously you don't want to have corporate welfare when you're doing this property tax relief. So I think if we could pinpoint, who are we going to be helping under this scenario, even with people 65 and up, it's a much easier, an easier fix, because you're dealing with less people in the population. And a lot of people have been against that because they don't want to create a nanny state. But look at why people go to Florida, because they know, hey, listen, I can at least do my budget for the next 5 years and know how I'm going to be able to live. So hopefully we're going to be able to make an effort in that direction and seal the deal on it, because I think that many people at this table and the Senate, the House, and the governor as well know that this is an important issue.
Thank you. Senator Udicek.
Thank you. Property tax reform, property tax relief, property tax elimination has been the #1 issue of my political career. My very first election, it was a priority issue, and it remains today. And I look at it from this perspective. We need to eliminate property tax as the primary source of school funding. It's a 19th century tax, and we want 21st century schools. And it penalizes and punishes those communities and those school districts that simply have no capacity to raise revenue. So that by virtue of your zip code, you may be denied what I think is your constitutional right in Pennsylvania, a fair and adequate education. We should not be a society of haves and have-nots when it comes to public education. I think it's been the greatest incentive to build our country, our Commonwealth, and this great democracy, affording kids an opportunity to empower their lives through education. We're seeing a great disparity. And matter of fact, Pennsylvania has the biggest disparity between investments in education at the high end in the suburbs of Philadelphia, where they may be spending $27,000, $28,000 a kid, versus somewhere in northeastern Pennsylvania where they're spending $6,000 to $7,000. We shouldn't have that great of a disparity. And so that's my perspective, where I come from on the property tax issue. And I am a supporter of Senate Bill 76. And the reason I am, and there's certainly flaws to that bill, but in Harrisburg, you have to move the ball down the field. You have to keep moving the ball down the field. And I'm not partisan in any way, so I say this with love, but during the 4 years of the Republican administration, we had a Republican House and a Republican Senate and a Republican governor. We didn't get a vote in the Senate on property tax relief and elimination. We got a vote for the first time in the history of Pennsylvania on Senate Bill 76. It failed 24-24. And the games that are played, that means that bill is dead, 24-24. The lieutenant governor voted in the negative, made it 25-24, and immediately to the Twitter and to social media, the Wolf administration killed property tax relief in Pennsylvania. It's just not true. The bill was dead. It didn't have the support of the majority party, and it failed. But there is consensus being built. We had Act 1 under Governor Rendell. which not only advanced property tax relief across Pennsylvania, expanded the property tax rebate tremendously, where 40% of the seniors in Luzerne County had their property taxes eliminated. I think we should focus more on that. Those are the greatest need. But it also limited how local school districts can raise their taxes to an index. And if you see that chart over that period of time, it really has suppressed the increases in property taxes. So we've made some progress. There's been an opportunity to build bipartisan compromise around the issue, but it is a tough, complex issue that we're going to have to continue to move that ball down the field and keep moving that ball down the field and advancing the issue of property tax relief.
Thank you. Representative Mullery.
Well, I think a lot of what I'm going to say will echo what John just said. And there's a reason for that. We're from the same town. I took over his legislative district when he moved on to the Senate. Property tax relief is the #1 issue in the 119th legislative district. It is the #1 topic of conversation I have with my constituents when either they're in the office, they see me at a ball game, or they run into me in the store. Folks who cannot tell you the bill number of any bill in the House, the Senate, or in Congress know HB and SB 76, and they know the general dynamic of the bill and how they believe it will affect them. It is a heavy lift, as you've heard from all of my colleagues, but I've been willing to shoulder that lift for 6 years. I'm proud to be one of the 10 bipartisan prime sponsors of the bill in the House. That being said, it appears that as a state government, we are only willing to progress on property tax relief in a moderate manner. What does that mean? That means when we had a chance to vote on a budget bill that included property tax relief in either October or November, it included relief for our most vulnerable citizens, the elderly, the disabled, and veterans. That bill failed 100% along party lines, if I believe. I'm correct on that, and my colleagues can correct me if I'm not. I will strike a different tone than Mike Carroll, who I respect greatly. I think you have to provide property tax relief to businesses. When you look at Pennsylvania as a destination for businesses who want to relocate, how attractive are we when we are 48th, 47th ranked for tax burden for businesses? So I think by eliminating property taxes, significantly reducing property taxes, you're going to see our current businesses reinvest in themselves, you're going to see our current businesses expand, and you're going to make Pennsylvania a destination for recruiting and attracting new businesses.
Thank you. Our next question will go first to Senator Blake. I have a few questions from the audience I'd like to put out there for the legislators. And at this point, we have about an hour left in the program. In order to cover more topics, you can choose what you can best address. I'll give you some options. I'd be happy to read a question again. I have a question from the audience. How are you planning on helping PA make the Clean Power Plan a success? I also have, after the close of 10 years of living with the natural gas industry, what do you see as went right, what went wrong, and what would you do about managing or benefiting from that in the future? And also we have some questions about what is the status on pension reform. So Senator Blake, you can choose to address whatever you feel.
So I'm going to take the last one first, and I'm going to do that because I'm the Democratic chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and I've had to live and breathe pension reform for the past several years. So let me begin my discussion. I'll try to do this within the amount of time I have. The problem that the Commonwealth has with respect to its state pension systems is a direct function of really, really bad public policy decisions made by your elected officials and governors past. Really bad decisions. Bad decisions about deferring contributions to the systems, employer contributions to the systems. We have unfunded liability directly traceable to the failure on the part of the Commonwealth as the employer to make contributions to the systems. That's where we are. Now, it has been our intent in the Democratic caucus to advance pension reform that has really 4 objects, if you will. Don't blow up the unfunded liability and exacerbate an already difficult situation. Guarantee retirement security for our school workers and our state workers. See if we can provide some fiscal relief to our state budget and to our school districts if we can. And the third and the last one, which has been a difficult one, is don't impair contract and have us in court where we've lost that battle in the past. Now, we worked a negotiated agreement on pension right before Thanksgiving, and we believed in our caucus that we got as close as we can get to our 4 objects for pension reform. It wasn't a perfect bill. We still have reservations about it, but it still went out of the Senate with, I believe, 9 Democratic votes. 9 Democratic votes. And the last arbiter for that reform package was the governor of this Commonwealth. The governor of this Commonwealth, who said that he believed he could sign it. It failed in the House. We're back at the drawing board, if you will, to try to come up with something that works. We need to go back to that table because I believe, as Representative Toohill mentioned earlier, this relationship between public policy issues and budget resolution is very sticky. It's very sticky, and certain Republican leaders in the Senate would insist on some reasonable, responsible state pension reform as the currency to buy support for a budget resolution. So that's why we were at the table negotiating. We got an ultimatum at one point: take the deal or we're done. All the things that have been negotiated to get a good budget, to invest in public education, to do recurring revenue that would not only settle our structural deficit this year, but avoid one next year. All of those things were tied to a responsible pension reform, and that's why we voted. That's why we voted. We still have a lot more work to do, and right underneath that tier of responsible state pension reform is municipal pension reform, which has to be taken up this year as well.
Thank you, Senator Blake. Representative Carroll.
Thank you. 2 really important and diverse subjects here, the environment and natural gas and pensions. Senator Blake did a thorough job on pensions, so out of respect to the Reverend, because I'm betting that the question related to the severance and natural gas is his, I'll speak to that as much as I can as time allows. As I remember the question, the essence of it was, what have we learned over the past 10 years or so with respect to natural gas extraction, clean power plan, and moving forward? For me, what we've learned over the last number of years with respect to natural gas extraction in this state is that we should have had a severance tax from the beginning. I'm proud of the fact that I co-sponsored and voted for a severance tax bill when the House Democrats were in the majority during the Rendell administration. Sadly, that bill never advanced in the Senate. So a severance tax should have been in play from the start, consistent with the other natural gas extracting states. Secondly, we needed to have from the start better oversight of the industry with respect to regulations to make sure that the aquifer was protected for those people who extract their water from a well. In many parts of this Commonwealth, there really is no reason not to have fair oversight and regulation of an industry that has that sort of an impact on people's daily lives. We're talking about their drinking water. Absolutely important to have necessary regulation and oversight of that. And that also speaks to the whole issue of just generally protecting the environment, because beyond just drinking water, we're talking about the streams and the rivers of this Commonwealth, the air that we breathe. All of that activity related to natural gas extraction deserves fair oversight to make sure that the environment generally is protected, even for those people who don't have property where the gas is being extracted. One other thing that we learned, in my opinion, that should have been fixed long ago, and this may be something that folks in this room are not tuned into, but that the minimum royalty provided to folks who have contracts with natural gas companies has been violated, in my opinion, and there needs to be protection of the royalties that are paid to folks that enter into a contract for natural gas to be extracted from their property. The natural gas companies, in my view, have taken advantage of post-production costs and have driven down royalties to folks in an unfair way. And there should have been some protection to those folks. Again, it speaks to the broader question of oversight of an industry. And then, just generally speaking, we have to think about energy production in this Commonwealth as it applies to the entire country, and I think that gets us to the Clean Power Plan. There's been a migration, although it's slowly, from coal-fired power plants to natural gas-fired power plants to a wind and solar portfolio. It has been a slow evolution from coal-fired power plants to natural gas. Hopefully, I think we've reached a point where we're going to rely primarily on natural gas energy production, but we really do need to make sure that we advance the other clean energy solutions, which is wind and solar, not ignore them, in fact, enhance them.
Thank you. Representative Paszynski.
Woo, that was a lot there, big guy. That was great.
When I see those cards going, I try and be respectful of the cards.
I was so proud of all of you, and I realized Cheryl's back there with the time cards.
I wish I could have a timeout.
I think it's great that the league, it's not written out, you can't see it, it doesn't say stop, it just holds up Eddie's face. And we know, air conditioned, we shut it down.
Are we having fun? Yeah. By the way, just so you know, I am very proud of the fact that I had the opportunity to actually teach both Jerry Mullery and John Udicek. They're my former teachers. I'm very proud of them. They've come a long way. They couldn't sing,
Both in the
but
same
they were
reform school.
Yeah.
Do no harm.
And then the other thing I think is really humorous, and I have to just share it with you. We're going to solve all these answers in 3 minutes.
Two.
No, we're down to 2.
Clock's ticking.
And I've already used up 50
You burned about
seconds.
50 seconds already.
Just to remind.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I just wanted to give you a reminder. We have pension reform or the natural gas industry or clean power plan, or, so
No,
continue.
I didn't forget the
I'm
question.
cutting into your time. All right, I wasn't sure.
All right, here we go, but thank you very much for that direction. Well, you've already heard about climate change. Some say it's real, some say it's not. There's that dichotomy we talked about before. Is it red? Is it blue? The bottom line is our planet is changing. It's our responsibility to take care of that because it's the only place we've got. Unless they come up with a new transport system, this is it. So we're all in it together. The other part that's a little bit of a problem in Pennsylvania is, we have another great resource, which is coal. And that brought Pennsylvania into the forefront many, many years ago. So the transition out of coal into natural gas and then again into wind and solar is important that we do that properly so we just don't lose those 35,000 jobs, throughout Pennsylvania. As far as natural gas is concerned, we have more natural gas than we can use. That's why we're building pipelines. Those pipelines are now going to export our gas, and all of that's fine. That demonstrates once again why you should have a fair and appropriate severance tax. I told you before, we lost $1 billion because we didn't pass anything since 2009. That's unconscionable. Lost forever, $1 billion. So the severance tax is coming. We're not going to get the same amount of money out of it now due to the economy, due to the way the price is. But the bottom line is, it's still an industry that it's our industry, it's your natural gas, it's your resource. You deserve to get a fair shake in that. Mike mentioned about EPA. It's an industry that could create incredible harm. And we have another resource that is incredible as far as a resource. It demands life. It demands protection. That's water. Pennsylvania is blessed with a tremendous source of pure water. We cannot allow that source to be denigrated. When it comes to our pensions, there's a whole bunch of us here that strongly believe that regular folks need a defined benefit plan. A 401k was a rich man's tax shelter. And we are very concerned that people making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 cannot sustain a loss in the market. They cannot sustain a loss in their 401k when they retire. If you were retiring when the tech bubble hit in 2001 and you had a 401k, guess what? You lost money. If you were retiring in 2008 and 9 and 10 when the last collapse occurred, you'd be in trouble. You'd lose 30% of your money. A defined benefit is the only kind of plan that needs to be managed for regular folks. What transpired? The legislature, the government, the former governors, they're the ones that put us in this spot. They're the ones that have to get us out of this spot. That's us. I believe there's plenty of room to create a fair and appropriate solution. I got the sign for stop.
Thank you. Representative Toohill.
All right, I'll talk about natural gas severance tax first. It's important to look at, first of all, we have, just like coal, it's like we have gold underneath our feet, where you can derive jobs, we can be energy independent, which is so important when we're, everybody that drove here today, I would assume, had foreign oil in their tank, and we drove here, we burned that foreign oil on the way over here, and we have gold right beneath our feet. We have natural gas, we have coal, and it's important that we are able to use those resources. That creates jobs, and it gives us energy independence, which is really important not only for the state of Pennsylvania, but for our nation on a global front. So I think that we have to do that safely, we have to do that fairly, and if you look at the history, natural gas drilling has been going on for a very long time, and we've had no severance tax that entire time. What we have had, it's important to look at, we've had a corporate net income tax of 9.99%, which is the highest in not only the nation, but in the world for corporations, corporate net income tax. And then on top of that, in 2013, we did another 4.5% tax. So you can look at, on average, that it's about a 14.5% tax. And I think that constant talk about and not having resolved the tax situation for the natural gas industry has led many of them to say, you know what, this isn't a business-friendly state, Pennsylvania. We're paying corporate net income tax, and nobody believes that we are because of commercials, and that they're also paying that 4.5% impact fee that's considered a tax as well. And so many of them have moved now. They've shut down jobs. Some of it is to do with natural gas being so low. The price has been driven down so low. But also that if you take states, neighboring states, they're people are incentivized, and those industries are incentivized to go there where there's more stability and they know exactly what is going to be put on them for a tax. With regard to the coal industry, our coal industry has been hit so hard by federal regulations. We have DEP that does a very good job of regulating our coal companies. There's very few and far between of them. And DEP even looks at the standards that are coming down from President Obama, and it makes it completely, it's non-functional for them to even be in business. So there's about 13 of them locally, like in our area here, 13, and even more across the state that are in jeopardy of closing. And we need diversity. We need wind, solar. Solar's a little bit difficult in Pennsylvania, but we need wind, solar, the natural gas and coal, and we need to be able to do those safely and have energy, create our own energy, and it's important for jobs here in Pennsylvania. So we do have jobs at risk, and we are looking now at what's going on federally and how we're going to protect Pennsylvania from that.
Thank you. Senator Udicek.
I've had the pleasure to serve on the Environmental and Energy Committee my entire tenure in the House, 12 years, and now I'm the Democratic chair in the Senate on the Environmental and Energy Committee. Natural gas development, the Marcellus shale boom, has been an overwhelming net positive for Pennsylvania and for the United States on jobs, on energy independence, on reducing the carbon footprint, and lowering energy costs across the board, both for commercial and residential. When I first served on that House Environmental Committee, gasoline was $4 a gallon, and oil was at over $100 a barrel. Excuse me. And all the experts pointed to the fact that that would never change. We would never see that change in our lifetime. America would never be energy independent. We would always be dependent on Middle East for our fuel. That has changed. Gas is now $1.87, and oil is under $30 a barrel. It is remarkable what has happened. And we are make no mistake, we're in a global battle here with the Middle East trying to suppress prices and drive many of our oil and gas companies out of business. This is about the future of the United States, the future of our energy policy, so we have to get it right. I'll disagree with Tara on the severance tax issue. We need a responsible severance tax in Pennsylvania. All the great oil and gas producers in the country have a severance tax, and it is about predictability for the industry, so they understand what bill they're going to have to pay, so that we can get to the investment we need on the downstream side of this equation, so that we can invest and make Pennsylvania, think about it, in having the resources we do, oil, gas, wind, solar, nuclear, we could be the cheapest place to do business for manufacturing in the country because we have the lowest energy costs. They're the kind of policy decisions that we need to get to, and you can't when you don't have a severance tax that's unpredictable. The impact fee that was imposed under Act 13 is not based on production. Less rigs are drilling wells, but Pennsylvania has the highest production in the world. In the world, we have some of the highest producing wells in the world, and from a tax policy standpoint, it is not appropriate and fair that we are missing out on the opportunity of that production. We need to make critical investments, whether it's pipelines to our industrial centers, whether it's the pipelines to our homes. There are 50% of Pennsylvanians, 50% do not have access to cheap natural gas. And that's unacceptable. We need to make those investments, but we also have to be responsible. I happen to serve now on the Environmental Quality Board. We are hearing now the Chapter 78 regulations that govern the development of oil and natural gas in Pennsylvania. We're going to be working through them. They're going to be some of the toughest standards in the country in terms of making sure that we monitor, that we regulate, and we oversee the development of natural gas in Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Representative Mullery.
This is where this gets hard, being like 6th or 7th. Everything I wrote down was said by somebody else, with one exception, and now two that I'll come up with here. But I can't say anything more about pensions than Senator Blake said, and everyone else has handled the Marcellus and Clean Power Plan pretty well. I supported the New York model. I thought that we needed to get our regs in place, we need to get our tax structure in place, and until we did that, we should have had a moratorium. When I first ran for office, I supported a moratorium moving forward until we were able to get that straight. Didn't happen, not going to happen, so move on. What did I learn after 10 years of natural gas in Pennsylvania? I've learned that we need to lessen the impact of money in politics. Because whether it's true or not, the public believes that money determines the outcome of elections and the actions of elected officials more than votes and more than their concerns. And nowhere did we see that more than with Governor Tom Corbett and the natural gas industry. So are there things that we can do now from a campaign finance reform to prevent that type of impression from happening in the future? Sure. Because I think everybody in this room would agree that large campaign contributions undermine public confidence and discourage participation in elections. So what can we do? We can make certain that our databases are easily searchable and accessible to the public. We can increase the frequency of our disclosure reports. We can mandate the disclosure of independent expenditures. And I know that's one issue that's important to League of Women Voters because they told us about that before they got here. But even if we do that, we have to require that we could prevent the undermining of hiding where those independent disclosures are going. And the other thing we can do is audit all campaign reports. Right now, I mean, I think the general public, when this happened to me after my first election, I was audited. I thought everybody was audited. Came to find out through 203 elections in the state house, 4 of us were chosen to be audited. Does that sound like it's a sound system? And it's not. It doesn't cost the state a lot of money because the entire burden of the audit falls on the candidate. So it was up to me to prepare everything to submit to the independent auditor. All they had to do was review it. The time and energy that I had to put into preparing my documents for audit fell upon me. So why isn't that something that can be done with every statewide office right through the judicial branch and the executive branch? But I think when you saw, and I heard it in public, how people felt the reason we didn't have regulation on the gas industry and the reason that there was no Marcellus shale tax was because of the relationship between the governor and that industry, that's something that needs to change moving forward.
Thank you, Representative Mullery. Representative Coffer?
I'm in the same boat as Jerry with commenting on this, but I'm going to try to make a few points because I want to talk about both issues because on one hand, we have the most important environmental issue facing not only our state, our country, our entire world, along with the biggest financial issue facing our state. So I'm going to try to run through a quick couple of bullet points so it won't be too well organized here, but the pipeline task force just got done. There was a work group that was commissioned by the DEP Secretary Quigley. The report is about to come out next week, 184 recommendations on what we can do to be environmentally safe, responsible about what's going on. I'm looking forward to seeing that full report and going through it line by line to find out what these 184 proposals are. I'm hoping that we'll have a nice conversation. I hope we can have another panel like this. Maybe the League of Women Voters even consider hosting it to talk about the environmental policy, what's been proposed, and what we can do. The Clean Power Plan, it was brought up for a vote to delay the Clean Power Plan from going out, not being put into effect. I voted no. I think we need to get serious about what we're doing with clean energy across our Commonwealth, across our country. I think it's a #1 issue that we can be addressing, and I think young people have been waiting for this to seriously be addressed because I think it's an issue, a generational issue, that's about time we get serious about addressing. I want to touch on pension reform now because it's been 4,400 days since we actually made our true payment that we need to make to our pension funds. And Senator Blake did a good job of explaining about how this has been building up for years. 15 years it's been building up. This year alone, our pension increase in our budget was $567 million. $567 million out of a $30 billion budget, roughly, that had to go and increase into our public pension funds for our state pensions. Next year, we're looking at another $700 million on top of that already $567 million increase. That will get us to the top peak of our actuarial value of where we actually need to pay. It'll take us another 35, 37 years at that level to actually start bringing down our pension obligation. I'm glad to see that we've made a serious determination as a legislature, which was in flux very much into this term and into this session, of actually not paying our pension obligation, deferring payments again. We did not do that. I'm very proud of our colleagues and what we've done in taking serious fiscal restraint to pay the biggest bill that has been going on. It says this, everybody sitting here at this table is at a restaurant, and you got up and said, I'm not going to pay this bill, but the next person that comes and sits at my table is going to pay this bill. Well, that's what legislatures have been doing for decades now. It's time to get serious about it. We've got to pay the bill, and I'm glad to see that we have. So I think pension reform is at the heart of this. Sorry that I'm here at the end to try to combine two really important issues, and I really want to talk about both more at length, but I already got the sign, so thank you.
Thank you. Don't apologize. It happens to everybody. Before we start our closing statements, which we'll start with Representative Carroll, I just wanted to make some quick announcements. I'm afraid to relinquish the microphone. I might not get it back. Our government directory for 2016 will be coming out in March. Dr. Michelle Anthony takes care of that. It's a lot of work, and I'm sure you've seen it before, but if you look for that, or you can give us your email address or mailing address, and we can get that out to you, or any government agencies that might want it. Also, Jim Naraki does our voter's guide for the primary election, and he'll be contacting the legislator's office, so he asked me to just give you a holler and look for that information so we can have the accurate information for the public. And Service Electric will be airing this event at a date to be announced. If you would like to see that event, you can contact Service Electric. Scott, I'm looking for my notes here.
825-8508.
825-8508.
And we will put it up on YouTube, so just you can type in League of Women Voters Legislative Breakfast 2016, and you should be able to find it.
Great, thank you. Starting with Representative Carroll, we're going to have some brief closing statements. We have about 25 minutes. I just want to give you the opportunity to address any other legislative priorities you have. I know a lot of you work on different committees and on issues we haven't discussed, so it's kind of an open closing question for you. So Representative Carroll.
Any sense of how much time I have?
I'm thinking about a minute and a half.
Okay.
Two. I'll cut you off at 2.5.
Well, I'll start by saying thank you for being here today on a Saturday morning at King's College, for listening to all of us, and for distilling what we have to say and drawing your own conclusions on what we say that you like and what we say that you're not thrilled with. I can tell you this, as somebody who has done this for 5 terms, and I stand for election this year for my 6th term, I thoroughly enjoy the give and take. I thoroughly enjoy the debate. I thoroughly enjoy governing. And what I have come to learn over my time as a legislator and my time prior to that as a staffer is that you can make a real difference for your community. The folks that I represent in Lackawanna County and the North Pocono area, and in Luzerne County and Pittston area, and the rural part of the Wilkes-Barre School District, I have come to appreciate the wonderful diversity and the wonderful passion they have for making their community and our region a better place. And my responsibility as a legislator is to be their partner, to be their voice in Harrisburg, their advocate in Harrisburg, to make sure that they're not at the back of the line when it comes to anything that's being discussed, whether it's a legislative proposal or whether it's a grant proposal or anything in between. It's my responsibility to make sure the folks I represent have a passionate advocate and somebody who can negotiate on their behalf to make sure that they're treated fairly, if not better. I enjoy the opportunity to work with all of my colleagues. We really do have a need when it comes to government on all levels to have people to be passionate advocates for their community. We need more people to be involved in government and politics. I'm thrilled that there's some young folks here today from Lake Lehman and maybe some other schools. We need to have more people that are passionately involved in governing in this Commonwealth. One of the biggest challenges I see with respect to governing on many levels is an unwillingness by so many folks to be involved in this process. We need more people to be involved in local governments, in county governments, in school boards, and in state politics, not to mention federal politics. I guess I should. We need more dedication, we need more passion, we need more participation. To the extent that the League advocates for all that, and I know they do, I thank you. I hope that we can get that message to a broader audience to make sure that folks know that what happens in a township building or in a county courthouse or in the state capitol has a direct effect on their daily lives. And I know people will line up around township buildings and fire halls in November to vote for president, but I would remind everybody in the room that the decisions that are made in a township building, in a county courthouse, on a school board, and in Harrisburg have as much effect on their daily life, if not more, than the President of the United States.
Thank you. Representative Paszynski.
Thank you very much. I ditto Representative Carroll's remarks. I'm still very much humbled to be able to serve the people of the 121st District. It is a privilege to serve, and I think it is, again, an extension of what we as a people must do to maintain our democracy. You are the power. You are the ones that put us in place, and you must make efforts to take active role. You obviously are. It's a Saturday morning, and here you are, and you're concerned about your future and the future of this Commonwealth and the future of this country and world. So we are in some very conflicting times, but I like to say this is our cross to bear. We must solve the problems that are laid before us. Our forefathers did. My father, my grandfather, our fathers, our grandfathers, grandmothers. They had to deal with World War II, the Depression, Korean War, plague. All of those things they were able to overcome. It is our responsibility to overcome the problems that face us today. I have all the confidence in the world we will do it. It won't be pretty, and there will be some of us that will suffer from it. A lot of people don't like to get into this business because of the fact that you are laying yourself out there for criticism. No matter what we do, someone's going to like our decision, and someone is going to disagree with that decision. That's just the way it is. Each one of us have to find in our hearts and in our souls that direction that leads us to that particular vote. Now, I want to spend just one short 30-second spot on health care. Why do taxes continue to go up? Why do all of a sudden the budget has to be greater? Because there's other cost drivers. Other things are going up, and one of those is health care. We talked about Medicare, Medicaid. It's going up because the cost of health care is going up. Why is it going up? I say because the moral element in healthcare is missing. The moral element that I'm talking about is it's our responsibility as human beings to take care of one another, to do it appropriately. And although that we have a private market in healthcare, they have a right to make a profit, and so they should. They do not have a right to gouge. And that's what's happening in the United States of America today with the healthcare industry. They are gouging the American people. How do we stop it? All of us. The truth, the right information, and now the hard work to get together and set into plan, work hard to make those changes. I stand with you, and I thank you very much, and the League for having this. It's a privilege to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Toohill.
Thank you. Really quickly, I wanted to just go back and clarify when I was talking about Marcellus Shale. I just want to be clear that I have supported a severance tax. I'm on a current bill that is supposed to make a uniform tax, and I was just trying to go through the history of how we've missed doing it correctly. Right now, it's estimated if we would do a severance tax and do a just even it out so it would be something predictable for the industry. And the industry says, listen, we just want to know what we're faced with so that we can predict out for years to come what we're dealing with in Pennsylvania. And that's why a lot of them have left the state of Pennsylvania. And right now it's estimated that that tax would generate $19 million. And when you're looking at schools and what we need to do about the pension crisis in Pennsylvania in order to lessen the pension problem that we have, it's a $50 billion price tag that we have for pension. So $50 billion, $19 million doesn't do much for $50 billion when you're talking about problems that are in the billions. So that's just kind of what I just wanted to clarify that. And I would do appreciate this venue to be able to speak with all of you. I am honored to be in the legislature. I'm on my third term, and it is something that I could never even dream that I would have actually been able to represent the people that I get to represent in southern Luzerne County in my home district. And there is so much that you are able to do for others, and you have your Harrisburg agenda and what you try to accomplish there, and then you have also the day-to-day people that you're able to work with and the things that you're able to do for them with problem solving, and how many times you look at something and you say, that is just wrong, that is just completely wrong. My greatest satisfaction from this job is being able to work on the Children and Youth Committee, because there are so many lost children, there are at-risk youth in our communities. We should not be reading headlines that say, baby eats meth. I mean, I don't know, people just flip the page. Baby eats meth, child with broken bones. There is so much more that we need to do for these at-risk children. Senator Udicek is a huge advocate when it comes to looking at the root causes of poverty, gangs, crime, what these children are going through when they go to school, and breakfast and lunch for free, that's the only meal they're getting. That school nurse is the only doctor that they're seeing. So there's so much that we need to do. Social workers need to be paid more, and we need to do more for our children. I'll leave it at that, but it is something that is much work to be done, and I'm very grateful to be up to the task. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Udicek.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the League and everyone that attended today. I appreciate it. Always enjoy these conversations. I want to note and point out that we have a inspirational young politician with us today, Beth Gilbert, on the City Council. Apologies to Kings, a Wilkes student who had an inspiring run. I thought I was crazy and young when I coming out of Penn State and running after graduation for the State House. She was still passing her exams and doing her college work while she ran for City Council. She's now a City Council person. And that's terrific. We need more young people, more engaged citizens in this process. Representative Brzezinski started the day by quoting Thomas Jefferson, a former teacher of his at GAR. I'll end my remarks with a quote, one of my favorite quotes from President Teddy Roosevelt. Government is us. And we tend to forget that point in watching the nightly news or the cable shows or reading the newspaper. Government isn't Republican or Democrat. A government shouldn't be driven by a liberal super PAC or a conservative super PAC. It really should be driven by citizens. And what a great country we have that we can impact elections. Not only can we choose our leaders, we can be our leaders. And I'm blessed to have been able to live out my childhood dream, to be a policymaker, to be a legislator, to be a politician. It's a great honor to be able to do this. It is challenging times, there's no question of that, but we need to engage citizens. And that's what I've tried to do my entire career. As Representative Tuhill noted, Operation Gang Up, where we tackled the crime issue here in northeastern Pennsylvania. That was a citizen-driven initiative, and it's been very successful. We were able to put an anti-gang law in the books. We were able to create the Attorney General Mobile Street Crime Unit that was deployed first in Hazleton. It's an innovative crime-fighting tool that has been successful throughout Pennsylvania. And we are now rolling out what I think will be the most innovative approach to so many problems facing northeastern Pennsylvania, whether it's crime, child poverty, the lack of educational attainment, and economic opportunity, and that's the SHINE program. The SHINE program, which has been so successful in Carbon and Schuylkill County for the past decade, we're replicating it here with Congressman Barletta and myself driving the train. But I have to tell you, all my colleagues up here on the dais today and in Harrisburg have been so supportive of that program. And rolling that out, we have over 188 kids that are now enrolled in the program, 48 teachers on the job, and it has been heartwarming. The response from the business community, from the nonprofit community, the United Way has been phenomenal in stepping up and tackling this issue. When you think of it, a third of our children in Luzerne County living in poverty, 300 kids dropping out of school each and every year. That is not a prosperous economic future for those kids. We need to invest in programs like SHINE and education and so many other things to lift all of us, not just those kids and their families, but all of us to greater prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mullery.
Thank you, and again, thanks to the League of Women Voters for having this forum. In the 24 years since I left this institution with a degree, I've held several different jobs. I've been a tax collector, I was a social worker, I worked in parole and probation, and for the greater part of my professional career, I was an attorney. No job that I've ever held, and those are jobs that provide the opportunity for a rewarding experience. None of those jobs compare to the rewards that we see sometimes on a daily basis. We are able to help people when they come into our office or stop us in the streets, oftentimes immediately, which results in just an instant gratification and a great feeling that, you know, you can go home at the end of the day and say, I was able to accomplish something today, I did something to help someone today. It makes you look forward to wanting to go to work. It makes you look forward to wanting to try to change policy in Harrisburg to better the lives of the people here. And as a result, when you look at this panel, we don't miss an opportunity to do that. I think in 6 years I've missed one voting session, and I was in Harrisburg. I was just so ill I couldn't get out of bed at the hotel. I mean, but it's a rewarding job. We love it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here working for you. When you talk about legislative priorities, I wrote down 7 quick ones that any time a vote presents itself in Harrisburg, I try to determine how that vote will have an impact on one of these 7 things, because I view these 7 things as the items most important to my constituency. Number 1, any chance we can get some property tax relief out of this. Number 2, could this in any way help create family-sustaining jobs in northeastern Pennsylvania? Number 3, does this improve our quality of public education? Number 4, can this help make the neighborhoods that I represent safer? Number 5, how does this impact the water my constituents drink and the environment they live in? Number 6, does it affect their Second Amendment rights? It's very important to people from northeastern Pennsylvania. And number 7, and this is a big one, and I know Aaron has joined in, Tara has been a lead on this in Harrisburg, welfare reform. Those 7 issues are the crux of what my constituents talk to me about and what they want me to work on in Harrisburg. So I keep those 7 things in my mind with every vote I cast. On a more specific level, I'm Vice Chairman of the Democratic Vice Chairman of the Game and Fisheries Committee. As many of you know, and maybe many of you participate, outdoor sports are extremely important here in the Northeast Corridor. I try to do everything I can to make those more enjoyable for our outdoors men and outdoors women. And those are things that I will continue to focus on if I'm fortunate enough to win re-election to a 4th term. So thank you very much this morning.
Thank you. Representative Coffer.
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. I have a lot to say, so I'm going to try to cram it in my 2 minutes. I might have to ask for a 30-second extension myself. But first of all, I just want to say I am truly humbled and honored to be in the State House of Representatives, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve this area and my constituents. There are several things I want to go through on my legislative priorities because I'm very prolific in my legislating and have a lot of bills I've written. I am a co-sponsor of a severance tax. I have addiction services legislation that I actually just sent out for co-sponsorship. We'll hopefully be running out of the Human Services Committee in the next couple of weeks, which helps streamline and consolidate our addiction services across the state. Quick little story, I had a young man who was a couple years younger than me in high school in my district office. His mother had brought him in. He was high on heroin at the time. The mother and the son said, I need help, where can we go? We tried calling every single agency you could possibly imagine in the state government to find where they said it was on a Friday, we could get an appointment on Monday. The mother said, what do I do until Monday? This was from a government official. I want to tell you what the response was. Keep giving him heroin until then. That was a government agent telling the mother of a son addicted to heroin. That's not acceptable to me. I'm working to streamline those services to create the actual stabilization and detox centers that we need in our state. Autism services, we have an issue with our TSS workers, the reimbursement rate, as well as our BSC licensing. I will be addressing that. I've been working on it with several legislators, and hopefully we'll have the bill moving out of the Insurance Committee in the very near future. Medical cannabis has been an issue talked about as part of that work group. The legislation is queued up and will hopefully be running soon. I've had a number of constituents in my office talking about that and the need that they are using it currently illegally or traveling to other states to do it. I think it's a #1 priority for a quality of life for a segment of people that are really struggling right now. Election reform, I talked a little bit about it. I'm introducing legislation I've been working on for almost a year and a half now on election reform, changing our election process, the two-party system, our caucus system. It will be coming out, and it is very substantial. It isn't a small task. Welfare reform, as Representative Mullery mentioned, I've been working on welfare to work proposals to help a transitionary programming to actually help people get out of poverty. We talk about welfare so often, but the poverty issue is a real issue in this area, and getting people who are in poverty to give them the helping hand up and not the handout, to help transition them from welfare to work in a dignified manner that will help them. Early education, after-school programming, Senator Udicek talked about SHINE, all for it, fantastic program. And last but not least, property tax reform. I have been part of that work group since day one of getting sworn in. I am committed to making sure we reach bipartisan consensus, because I will not listen to another phone call like I got last week of a man losing his home in our area who is a Vietnam veteran who fought for this country, and now that same country he fought for is taking his home away from him. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I know I have an extensive legislative agenda coming forward, but thank you.
Thank you. Senator Blake.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out this morning. Thank you for your civic engagement and the opportunity. I want to thank the League for the opportunity to have dialogue. I'll echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Deep honor and a privilege to serve in the Pennsylvania State Senate. I represent 255,000 people across 47 communities in 3 counties. My responsibilities are dual, as you've heard from my colleagues. I have to be an effective legislator in Harrisburg. I have to be responsive to my constituents back home. We're advocates, we're conveners, we are facilitators. These offices empower us with great opportunity to meet the people where they need to be met, and to hopefully meet their aspirations and their hopes and their expectations. Been in this office now marking my first year of my second term, my 5th year in the Senate. In the past 5 years, my legislative record has reflected the sensibilities of the people I represent. They depend on us for judgment. And when I'm on the floor of the Senate, and John Udicek will echo the sentiment, they call our name. It's a roll call vote. It's A or nay. Can't be in the back room, can't avoid it, can't It's A or nay. And my judgment has to be called into question, and the people I represent have to know that that judgment is informed, thoughtful, responsible. And I take great pride in the opportunity to represent the people of the 22nd District. My legislative agenda has been often where my committee assignments have been, and in those subject matter areas that we tend to be most closely associated with professionally. We lean on each other in the Senate by virtue of the expertise. If there's an agricultural issue that's going to come up, I'm going to ask Judy Schwenk what it's about, because she's our agriculture chair. If it's an environmental issue, I'm going to ask my colleague, Senator Yudichak, what are we doing here? Because we lean on each other in those special areas. In the past 5 years, I've focused heavily on career-focused education, trying to incorporate career education and work standards into the curriculum of 2 IUs, over 20 school districts, and we got them incorporated. They didn't have them. 3 years ago, they just didn't have this curriculum. I had a chance to go to the IU to watch teachers talk about a spark in one of the kids because they're finding the opportunity to make a career decision and to try to map a more efficient transition from school to work, because our kids need that. That's been a very important issue that I've been championing for a good bit. I was able to do one of the largest economic development initiatives in the entire nation in 2013, Innovate PA, $100 million tax credit program. I got it through to the governor's desk for signature because of the help of a Republican colleague, John Gordon from Columbia County, because we don't do anything alone. We don't do anything alone. And we will get to the consensus that you demand of us regarding the stewardship of the state's finances and the predictability of our fiscal condition going forward. But it's a deep honor to serve in this office. I appreciate the opportunity to have dialogue with you, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. That was wonderful. Very informative. We really do appreciate all of you here today and our supporters in the audience. Please don't forget to look for us in March and April for our primary events that will be coming up. Rhonda?
Oh, one thing about voter registrations, there's going to be one at Wilkes on March 10th during Club Day. Oh, they're gone. Wilkes.
Okay.
And there's another one in Misericordia, and there will be one here at Kings that will last all week. They're going to do online registration. And LCCC. We're going to
Okay, you can friend us on Facebook, find that information there on our website. So thanks again, have a great afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you at our next event.
Are you going to do it?